Welcome to the Sherdog Radio preview for UFC on ESPN 26, Makhachev versus Moises, also known as UFC Vegas 31. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com, and with me is Keith Schillen. Keith is the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network, where he is the creator of numerous shows, including MMA Legacy, Getting Too Personal, and of course the Shillen and Duffy Show, where he is the host of the post-event recaps. Keith, how are you doing this evening?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. I think I'm really refreshed because I don't think we've had any MMA recently. I don't think MMA has been in the news at all. Been very, really quiet. So it's nice to finally get back to fights and a massive, huge card like we have this weekend. It'd be nice. I think maybe ESPN will pay attention to us this week. It'd be great.
Keith, of course, is being ironic here, but really, after it's always intense. A Conor McGregor fight card, whatever happens, it's always intense. It's always a bit of an emotional roller coaster, whether you personally are emotionally invested or not. This past weekend, UFC 264 was no exception. And to me, it just feels like a hangover. Just the lights are too bright, the noises are too loud. And this is the perfect card to just kind of soothe you out of that. This is like your cup of coffee and your couple of ibuprofen the next morning.
Yeah.
Like it's not asking much of you. It's pretty light fare. I mean, it's only an 11 fight card, which in this era of 13, 14, 15 fight cards, that's nice. And then it's pretty light. I'm not going to say like the talent level, because there are talented people on this card, but on the divisional relevance level, we were talking about it before we started recording. You can make a good argument that the main event is the only fight on this entire card where the winner is guaranteed to be a top 15 fighter at the end of the night.
Yeah.
That's rare for a UFC card.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of difference between this card and the last card. I love the word hangover because when you were saying that was the exact word I was thinking of. But I wonder if this card is like, you have that time you go out with your friends, you're like, yeah, I'm going to party it up. And when you go to this, frat party and you drink as much as humanly possible and then you're puking. And then the next day you're saying you're never going to drink again. And then later that afternoon, your buddy's calling you saying, hey, let's just go to like one bar and we'll have two drinks. We'll call it early. And then the next minute you're waking up at 3 a.m. and you're like next to some like random fat chick. Wonder if this card's going to do that to us.
I certainly hope not. That's quite a picture you paint there.
No. So some of the contrasts, obviously, like you mentioned, rankings wise, the last card mattered a lot more. Star power wise, the biggest star on this card, name value wise, is someone who hasn't fought, and I think it's like 5 years.
It's
Miesha
4,
Tate.
yeah.
4 years, sorry, 4 years in Miesha Tate. So. Yeah, and even that is not really drawing any headlines. As I thought we'd get a lot more attention than it's getting. It's kind of flying under the radar. Former champion coming back, fan favorite coming back. But you mentioned that the betting lines are kind of really all over the place. It's very wide. I like to remind people that sometimes the betting line doesn't always mean how the fight will turn out or what they expect to turn out. The betting line is based on how Vegas can make the most money possible to get you to bet. Well, obviously that's pretty close with the lines, but that negative 200 favorite suddenly turns into a negative 300 favorite to get you to bet on the underdog more and stuff. So just take that in mind, because some of these fights that I think that the lines are really big, I think should be much closer.
I agree in general, and obviously the lines exist to insulate the bookies from risk and try to drive action on both sides, but it's based on who they think is going to win the fight. I was talking with Sherdog associate editor Jay Petrie with this about this earlier today. He's obviously the guy I go to when I'm like, hey, can you remember the last time that blank? Because the headliner here, Islam Makhachev, is currently sitting as a minus 600 favorite. That's a 6-1 favorite. And I asked Jay, when is the last time we had a UFC headliner that wasn't a title fight or a short notice booking that was that big of that was like that big of a gap, that big of a line? Because with a title fight, Yeah, you have to make the fight you have to make. You can't be concerned about the line. So, I mean, every time Valentina Shevchenko fights, it's going to be a headliner, and it's usually going to be more than 6-1. In the last 5 years, like the John Jones versus Thiago Santos, John Jones versus Anthony Smith, Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Al Iaquinta, which was both a title fight and a short notice booking.
Kind of.
Yeah, Demetrius Johnson versus Wilson Hayes, Demetrius Johnson versus Tim Elliott. I mean, the only one that wasn't a title fight was Cub Swanson versus Artem Lobov.
Really?
Yep, that's in the last 5 years.
Wow. And again, I'm looking at. I always go to Best Fight Odds to see all the lines, different websites. In FanDuel, as of right now, no, it's Wednesday night. It's 10:01 p.m. on the East Coast. Islam Makhachev is a negative 850 on FanDuel. Now, all the rest are about 650, 670, some as high as negative 700, but only FanDuel, negative 850.
Wow.
Which is really insane.
That is, and I mean, we'll get to that when we get to that actual fight, you know, why the line is where it is and what we think is actually going to happen. But
that's a Bellator prelim line.
Well, that was the context in which I first brought this up to Jay, is that, hey, you know, you can criticize the UFC's matchmaking. There are plenty of things to point out about it, but generally speaking, you don't see 6-1 favorites at the top of a card. It's not usually that transparent. Having said that, there are a couple examples on this card of let's get this guy a win fights, but I'm going to start talking about every fight on the card randomly if we don't get started here. Anything?
Let me give you one nugget before we actually get to the fights.
Please.
Cody Law on Bellator 262, which I'll be in attendance. So you want to check out all the post-fight interviews, go over to SureDog YouTube page pretty much right after the fight, and you'll see the interviews. But Cody Law right now is a negative 1,500 favorite on one card. I can imagine putting up $1,500 to win 100.
No, I mean, that's just called a savings account.
Yeah.
just like leave your money in the bank.
Yeah.
Good grief. And it's better to leave your money in the bank because you never know when your bank's going to be Aaron Pico, and that, like, you know, minus 1,500 actually doesn't pay for you. So, oh man, shall we get into these prelims?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
All right. First up, we have a heavyweight matchup between Alan Baudot and Rodrigo Nascimento. Baudot, the 33-year-old Frenchman, is 8-2 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC. He made his debut back in October at UFC Fight Night Moraes versus Sandhagen, where he got thumped by Tom Aspinall in about 90 seconds. He'll be taking on Nascimento. The 28-year-old Brazilian is 8-1 overall. He is 1-1 in the UFC after debuting out of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series. He debuted last May at UFC on ESPN Overeem versus Harris, where he choked out Dontel Mays in the second round. He then came back in October at that same Fight Night card as Baudot was on and got knocked out in about 45 seconds by Chris Daukaus. You may remember that card as the one where 3 undefeated prospects lost in a row in very quick fashion. It was kind of a shocking night of fights. At any rate, the odds heavily favor the Brazilian to turn things around here. He is minus 350. You can get Baudot at plus 280, plus 285 or so. I probably have fewer thoughts on this one than you do. So I'll go throw a couple things out here real quick. I'm kind of surprised that Baudot is back at heavyweight. He was a light heavyweight. Earlier in his career, he made a short notice debut at heavyweight against Aspinall. While he weighed in at like 250, I mean, it wasn't 45 pounds of quality weight that was on him. He looked like a guy that could and maybe should drop back down to light heavyweight, but nonetheless, he is not. He's still at heavyweight, and he's at heavyweight against a big dude in Rodrigo Nascimento. Baudot, I mean, he's a teammate of Francis Ngannou, and In some ways, he's kind of like crappy Francis Ngannou. He's kind of like, Brock Lesnar versus like Chris Tuchscherer, where like he doesn't have the Adonis, it looks kind of the same, but doesn't have the Adonis body and just isn't quite as good at most of the same things. He does have good knockout power, or I mean, at least he did at light heavyweight against people in Europe. We don't know here, but unless Nascimento just completely pisses this fight away, this should be pretty easy for him. My problem is he might completely piss this fight away. Good thing about Rodrigo Nascimento is for a big dude, and he weighed in at 265 on the dot for the Daukaus fight. He moves quickly. He's good offensive wrestler. He's got pretty good entry. He's just quick on his feet, coordinated, really strong guy, and just good top position grappler. He's heavy on top. Looks for the submission, but doesn't mind softening people up with some big old canned ham fists. My problem is going into the Daukaus fight, he's got a dude across the cage from him that he outweighs by literally 40 pounds, and he knows what Chris Daukaus does. Like Chris Daukaus's way he's going to beat you is to stay in his preferred boxing range and punch your face off, and he somehow let him do it. Like how did that happen? And that makes me scared. Like I'm so tempted to go with an upset special right out the gate, because the one thing Bodo could do is just tag this dude with something silly in the first 10 seconds, which is basically what Chris Daukaus did. And it's all over. I am picking.
Do it.
I'm chickening out. Ferreira is or Nascimento. He's a young guy. He's at a good team. He's obviously got good handlers. They will have drummed into him what he needs to do right off the bat in this fight. I hope and expect that this fight will be on the ground within 15 seconds. And give me Rodrigo Nascimento by first round submission.
Yeah, Rodrigo Nascimento should not be a negative 300 favorite against anybody. Like they could drag my out of shape body in there, and obviously he would murder me, but like he should be only like negative 330 favorite against me. So Nascimento, he is pretty good athlete, but like you said, I think that's at light heavyweight, his movement. But I think that will increase as he goes up. He should be faster as he goes up. But then you worry about the power. Like, will the power follow? Southpaw, he keeps his hands way too low for my liking, especially considering he doesn't have the best defense. He does hit hard. Like I said, we don't know if that's going to transfer back up to heavyweight. And he swings wild. He throws from his hips. He tends to throw hard in every shot, looking for a knockout. But he keeps his chin high in the air, huge target with his hands low. If he closes his distance, he will fight in the clinch, but I've seen him get out-muscled in the clinch when he looks for a takedown. But if he can get a trip, he's pretty solid on top. He also can get takedowns from distance. He'll shoot on your hips. But pretty good ground and pound, slick submissions. He's got 6 submissions on his record. Now, Bordeaux, he's a striker. He's very busy. But there's no like rhyme or reason to his busyness. It's just kind of like chaos. It's very unorthodox, wild. He uses some feints, but doesn't really answer them. He feints and then doesn't do anything. He'll feint and then throw like a spinning back elbow that doesn't hit. He also needs space to land his shots as the kind of weird strikes coming at you. But when he settles down, he's not too bad. He has some hard leg kicks. He's not a great wrestler, but I have seen some nice judo trips in the clinch. But when he's on top, he has weak top control. Doesn't really keep his opponent down. I do like his creativity, though. Like one fight, he was on his feet and his opponent was on the ground, and he was kicking to the body of a downed opponent, which was creative to understand that you could kick to the body, which you almost never see. But his takedown defense was really weak. I mean, he tends to look for a switch instead of a sprawl. Like when the guy's on his hips, he's trying to reach over and switch, which hardly ever works against anybody with any kind of grappling skills. And we saw in his last fight, like Tom Aspinall took him down, and as soon as they hit the canvas, Tom Aspinall went right to the mount. So that worries me. Now, this could be a fun fight, though, to start the night. They're both wild. They're both very aggressive, throwing big haymakers. However, I'm with you. I'm in agreement. I'm taking Nascimento. He just simply has more avenues to win. I think both guys can land on the feet and get a knockout. But if the fight goes to the ground, it's probably from Nascimento. And Bordeaux looks so bad on his back that if Nascimento takes him down, I think Nascimento submits him. And I actually think that's what's going to happen. I think Nascimento takes him down, and I'm going to say Nascimento submits him in the very first round.
There you go. 2 picks for Rodrigo Nascimento by first round submission to kick off the UFC on ESPN 26 card. Next up, it's the flyweights, as Francisco Figueiredo, the younger brother of the former flyweight champion, Deiveson Figueiredo, takes on Malcolm Gordon. Figueiredo, the 31-year-old Brazilian, is 12-3-1 with 1 no contest overall. He's 1-0 in the UFC, having made a successful debut at the expense of Jerome Rivera via unanimous decision back in January at UFC on ESPN, Chiesa versus Magny. He'll be taking on Gordon. The 31-year-old Canadian is 12-5 overall. He is 0-2 in the UFC, having lost to Amir Albazi last July at UFC Fight Night 172, and then having gotten knocked out in just 44 seconds by Sumu Darji at UFC on ESPN 18 in November. Odds on this one heavily favor the Brazilian. He is minus 310. You can get Gordon at plus 255, even plus 260. Keith, how do you feel about this fight? And how do you feel about Francisco Figueiredo in the division generally going forward? It's a more relevant question now that his brother's not the champ anymore.
Yeah. Let's just have Moreno face him now. Let's get his, the revenge out there. Let's, make it a family affair. No, he's a guy that came off the Contender Series, and I liked him, but I don't think he has as nowhere near the ceiling his brother has. Like, I'd be shocked if he gets much higher than like a top 10 guy, and that's more just because flyweight's shallow. Like, there's easily 10 guys probably at flyweight right now that I would feel very comfortable picking him.
Wait, was he on the Contender Series?
Yeah, he was. Oh, was he? Oh no! Did I just do tape study and I just assumed he was on the Contender Series?
He came straight out of Jungle Fight.
Oh, there you go. You know what? Sometimes I remember doing a lot of tape study on him, so that's why I assumed he was a Contender Series guy. So he's a southpaw, though he's one of these guys that really does fight out of both positions a lot. A lot of guys switch positions, and that's kind of thing I've realized when I kept writing the notes about everybody that I was like, I just have to. Stop saying it, but he's one of the guys that truly, you never know what stance he's going to be in. He's a pressure counter striker. He's not a great athlete, and it's really unfair to compare him to his brother because his brother's skill set is much higher. But he's not a great high level athlete. He's not really as explosive, but he's pretty accurate striker. I'll give him that. He's probably more technically sound than his brother. He doesn't have a lot of tells. He doesn't really load up on shots like his brother does. He works behind a jab. They kind of weird. He has his hands out. He keeps them out a little bit more, which is weird. Obviously, gives you the target to come down the middle, but they come from a different angle, which surprises people. I like his secondary strikes, though. He's got this little short, tight right hand when he's in the orthodox stance that I've seen him have a lot of success with. When he steps into range, he likes to throw hard power shots, kind of like his brother does, but not to the same crackingness. But I like that he throws like knees up the middle, step in knees, knees to the body, hard kicks followed with his punches. He mixes in the kicks and the punches as well. And I like sometimes he'll throw a kick and follow his kick with a punch instead of the other way around. Like almost uses a kick like it's a jab. He also loves a flying knee. Like if you back up towards the cage, he kind of uses that as like knowing his distance, knowing that you can't back up any further. So he knows where his range is, where he has to hit, and he likes to throw in a flying knee. And actually, I'm surprised that more people don't do that enough because it is definitely an effective thing when you know they can only really go side to side to avoid it. But he has two major holes defensively. One is he keeps his chin really high in the air, and the other one he drops his hands. So when you have chin high in the air and you drop your hands, you really, really have to rely on head movement. I like that he'll sneak in a takedown, but he doesn't shoot. He doesn't power through the hips like his brother does. And it's funny when we were going to talk about Figueiredo, one thing I said to myself, don't keep comparing to his brother. I was like, it's not fair. And then all I've done is the whole time is compare him to his brother. He's more of a guy that he'll either like catch a kick to get a takedown, or he'll just run forward and hope to like you back against the cage, and then he just ends up on your hips and kind of pulls you out that way. He's not a guy that shoot on your hips and drive through, or shoot on your hips and cut a corner. He's not a traditional wrestling style. But what I like, especially in his last fight against Joe Rivera, he showed really good top control, which I didn't really see it that much on the regional scene. And he's got a good submission game. He's got 7 subs on his record. I would say he's a weak defensive wrestler, though, but he has a good get-up game. When he has been taken down on the regional scene, he's very hard to hold down. One thing we were saying about him in his last fight was that he has weak cardio. We've seen him gas in fights. That I think that was a little more early in his career. Like last couple fights, he's been able to press hard. He's just one of these guys who looks like he's tired. Like he takes a lot of breaths. He looks up at the clock. He's one of these, but he doesn't really stop fighting. Like he doesn't. His output doesn't drop as much as people think it does. Now move on to Malcolm Gordon. He's a pretty good athlete. He's pretty aggressive. He's pretty fast with his hand speed, but he's got a really weak chin. He's got 4 knockout losses already in his career for someone who just recently came to the UFC. He really wants he'll box you, but his plan is always to get the fight to the ground. But he's not a wrestler. He's kind of a weak offensive wrestler, and he's a very weak defensive wrestler. He's just relentless. Kind of very similar to Figueiredo, where he just kind of wants to pull you back, and then when you get to the cage, just drop down your hips and kind of slowly get a leg behind you, pull you out that way. But if he gets the fight to the ground, he can get a submission. He has 6 wins by submission, but he's more of a guy that he's not the slickest grappler. He's more of a guy that just work you on the ground for a while, and then when an opening finally finds himself, he gets submission. And a lot of those submissions came against much lower level competition. So as far as predictions go, I probably been talking about this fight way more than I should. This is simply a matchup between a guy that I think is a UFC level fighter and a guy that I don't think is a UFC level fighter. I've said that about Melvin Gordon, as both his fights in the UFC has not looked good in either one of them. I think Figueiredo is a much better striker. I think he's a much better grappler. I think he has the power advantage. He's the bigger guy. I think he picks him apart from range, sneaks in a few takedowns. And you know what? I was going to take Figueiredo to knock him out because of Melvin Gordon's chin, but we haven't really seen Figueiredo as a big cracker. So I'm going to say Melvin Gordon. I'm thinking about football. Malcolm Gordon.
Malcolm Gordon. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I take Figueiredo to knock out Melvin Gordon too, but give me Figueiredo by unanimous decision.
Outstanding. I'm feeling a lot of the same that you are here, and their relative strengths and weaknesses being what they are. Like, if I knew that Figueiredo was going to walk out and just actually be active and try to put it on Gordon, I'd call first round knockout like in a heartbeat. My question with calling for the knockout is the same as yours. You know, he's even more deliberate in pace than his brother is, and now I'm comparing him to his brother too. And we've talked about his brother as a pressure and snipe type guy, who kind of manages his gas tank by waiting for the perfect shot. I love that you talked about Gordon's chin, because I agree, like his chin is a problem, especially because his fight style asks a lot of his chin. But there's 2 different kinds of bad chin fighters. There's the guy like Luke Rockhold or late career Chuck Liddell, where if someone hits him in the right place, they're just out. It's smelling salts time. Malcolm Gordon, he's more like a Frank Mir, or if you go back, here's the Wayback Machine, a guy like Dennis Kang, where once somebody hit him cleanly, it's like all the wheels fall off the wagon, and he just looks like he wandered into the wrong bathroom. Like, he like turns his back and starts to like shuffle away, just like kind of looks confused, like, why is this happening to me? And next thing you know, he's taking like 11 more shots to the face and it's all over. That's Malcolm Gordon. Like, that's basically the Sumo Darji fight right there. And even though he got worked by Amir Albazi mostly on the ground, what really made the wheels fall off the wagon was the first time Albazi hit him hard on the ground. Then all of a sudden, like, he just forgot how to grapple. It's kind of like the old Rickson Gracie thing, take a black belt, hit him in the face, he becomes a purple belt. Like, yeah, like he knocked Malcolm Gordon all the way to white belt with like one good elbow. Those are things that I can definitely see Francisco Figueiredo doing to him. The only question is what kind of sense of urgency he's going to have. Going into his first UFC fight, Figueiredo versus, what's his name that fought last week? Jerome Rivera. My main question was, as a guy who also fought at bantamweight, and had been off for like a year and a half. Was he even going to make the flyweight limit? What was he going to look like? Again, probably a case of his brother setting expectations for him. He looked fine at flyweight. I expect he's going to look fine here as well. And man, they're setting them up for success. They had him debut against Jerome Rivera. He gave Rivera his second straight UFC loss. Rivera just took his fourth straight UFC loss. Now he's going against Malcolm Gordon, who's 0-2 in the UFC. I think he's going to send him to 0-3. At some point, they're going to have to give Francisco Figueiredo a real live UFC quality flyweight. I'm pulling for that to happen next. But until then, I'm going to say that he does do enough to get this done. Give me Francisco Figueiredo by second round knockout.
We shouldn't compare the two brothers because, in fairness, one of the brothers is on a winning streak in the UFC and the other one is on a losing streak.
That's true. Like, Deiveson needs to, kind of get things together. Stop bringing shame to the family name.
That's right.
I legit am interested to see what happens if neither of them is the champ and they're both working their way up the ranks. But that's a question for at least a few months from now, because we're not going to learn anything about this Figueiredo's championship potential from what he does to Malcolm Gordon.
It's funny because you would think with one of them used to be a bantamweight that's recently moved down to flyweight, and you feel more comfortable about him at flyweight, just the weight loss, weight cutting. We've seen Figueiredo miss weight several times, and then also, like, even when he has made weight, he looked like his last fight against Brandon Ray, he looked extremely flat. But remember, he was like the last guy to weigh in, just barely made it,
Of course, had, an excuse.
Yeah, they might be at flyweight for a very short time because Deiveson, they might be forcing him to move up.
What?
Which I actually think would be really bad for him because some of the advantages he has at flyweight, like, so here we go way off topic, but a lot of the advantages he has at flyweight, he won't have at bantamweight.
Agreed.
And it's a different division too.
It's very different division, and the just physical bully potential he has at 125 will not be there at 135.
Exactly.
Absolutely not. When you're looking at dudes like just Rob Font types are just going to be so much bigger than him. The UFC Vegas 31 prelims soldier on, and it is a bantamweight matchup between Miles Johns and Anderson Dos Santos. Johns, the 27-year-old out of Fortis MMA, is 11-1 overall. He's 2-1 since joining the UFC out of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought most recently last October at the UFC's Halloween Fight Night card, knocking out Kevin Natividad in the third round of their matchup. That allowed him to bounce back from the first loss of his career, a second-round knockout at the hands, or at the knee, really, of Mario Batista at UFC 247 in February of 2020. He's taking on Dos Santos. The 35-year-old Brazilian is 21-8 overall. He's 1-2 in the UFC. He lost his first two UFC bouts against Nad Narimani and Andre Ewell. Came back from those and choked out Martin Day in the first round with a guillotine at UFC on ESPN Smith versus Clark last November. I alluded off the top that there aren't a whole lot of close fights on this card in terms of the betting odds. This is one of the relative few, as Johns is minus 160, Dos Santos plus 140. Keith, tell me about Miles Johns and tell me about Anderson Dos Santos. Tell me anything about him other than the obvious, which is that he sounds like somebody just made up a Brazilian fighter name.
Yeah. So Miles Johns is a guy that I like. Now, that's a guy who did come off the Contender Series.
Yes.
Former LFA champion. I was really high on him coming in the UFC, and I've been a little disappointed. I've been disappointed in his gas tank, his ability to pull the trigger. Just he's not. He looks like a mid-level UFC fighter. Well, at one point, I thought this guy could be I don't know if he was going to win the title, but I expected him to, maybe be in the top 15 rankings. And obviously, there's still a lot of time for him. I hope he turns the corner because, I like my wrestle boxers. So he's a wrestle boxer. He's small, short, compact guy. Fights behind a high guard. Stays really tight. Kind of reminds me of like a Chad Mendes, but without Chad Mendes' big power. Now, though Johns has some pretty good power himself, a lot of feints, follows a stiff jab. He follows his jab to slide into the pocket, unload, big hooks and uppercuts. Kind of throws everything into his punches. Almost knocks himself over when he as hard as he throws. When he telegraphs a lot of his strikes by doing this, by throwing so hard instead of just letting it come with him. He's a short, stocky guy, and the power's there. He doesn't really have to overdo it. But when he does connect, he puts your lights out. But as I said, he can be a little gun shy. We've seen him like scared to pull the trigger. He's often looking to land the perfect strike, and he's either gassed out a little bit, and because of that, maybe that's why he's slowing down his pace because he doesn't trust his gas tank anymore, and then he thinks if I'm only throwing one strike, that's why I have to throw hard. But there are some things I like hard leg kicks, though he doesn't really check leg kicks. He really struggled with the range and the movement of Mario Batista, which could be a similar problem in this fight as Dos Santos is a little similar to Batista. Not nearly as polished as Batista, but I mean size and movement. But John's he's a good wrestler. He's got some fast entries. He'll either shoot on your hips or just catch a kick. Really good at scrambles. He's really strong. If he grabs a hip, grab your leg, he likes to pick you up and slam you. Heavy ground and pound. I don't like how he defends takedowns, though. A lot of times he won't defend a takedown. He'll actually like look for a guillotine, a barber truck. Kind of has that Team Alpha male in him, which is probably why it reminds me of Chad Mendes. But because of that, he loses positions to weaker wrestlers. And he makes a mistake. He gives up his back to get back up, which hasn't affected him yet, but that's going to happen. Like he's going to give up his back next minute to get submitted by someone really good. Now, Dos Santos is not going to let Johns throw one strike and sit back because Dos Santos is he's a pressure brawler. Like he wants to get in the pocket and throw hard shots. Like we could have a lot of getting in the pocket and both guys throwing heavy right hands. Anderson Dos Santos, he reminds me of his striking, I should say, not him. His striking reminds me of a very poor man's Dan Henderson striking. And what I mean by that is he's just a guy who falls in love with his right hand, where he wants to just get in there and just whip this overhand right and knock you out. But that's where it ends with Dan Henderson. And he doesn't have Dan Henderson's power. I just mean like when people know what I'm talking about, when we're talking about a guy who's just looking for the overhand right. Weak takedown defense. Well, actually, let me go back to his striking defense. Weak striking defense. I mean, this guy like graduated from the Chris Martino school of striking defense, where he does not move his head at all. He just walks forward and gets jabbed. As far as wrestling, weak takedown defense. He does look for takedowns himself, but doesn't really set him up. He kind of just dives in on the hips instead of shooting a drop step, similar to what I was saying about Malcolm Gordon and stuff. Just kind of want to. He doesn't really shoot on, just kind of reaches. But if he gets you down, he's a good grappler. He's got 12 submission wins in his career. I mean, most of those were, I think, all but one of them were on the regional scene. So take it as you want, but 12 submission wins is still 12 submission wins. So as far as the prediction goes, I am disappointed in Johns, but I still favor him greatly in this matchup. I think he's the faster fighter. He definitely has that crushing power, which can, even when he's losing, he could, right the wrong with one big shot. He should be able to land takedowns fairly easy against Dos Santos. I think Dos Santos' best chance is probably catching a submission, maybe a guillotine or something when Miles Johns shoots on his hip. But I just don't see that happen. I think John catches him on the feet with a big shot. And I think I'm gonna say Johns knocks him out. I'll say the second round. And right now I'm looking at, I think you said he's a negative 188 favor. What would you say?
160 minus 160.
Sorry, negative 160.
Closer, yeah.
Sorry, negative 160. I wrote down negative 188. That must have been earlier in the day. I like those odds. And you talked about this line, the lines tonight being all over the place. This is one of the fights you actually can bet on. And because of that, I think John should be a bigger favorite than negative 180. So I'm going to lock this in as I think this is my best bet of the night. I want to remind everybody, as I do every week, though, if you're following my bets or any bets, please bet responsible. Don't bet your mortgage. Don't bet on Cody Law at negative 1,500 on Bellator. But if you do bet, you want to put some money on it, please do it responsibly.
There you go. I like your breakdown here. I'm with you. I was high on Johns coming into the UFC. I mean, let's be honest. You really liked him because he beat Richie Santiago, the Milford Mala, on the Contender Series, and we all know how much you hate New England MMA. So that elevated your expectations. For me, it's that he had a great title fight with Adrian Yanez back in LFA. Yeah, please.
Can I jump in 1 second?
Yeah.
Richie Santiago is Chris Martino's main training partner.
Hey.
There you go.
It's a
Everything goes
small
back
world.
to Chris Martino.
Small. Hey, and they're both from Milford. Yeah, I mean, right before that, the fight that got him the call was a great 5-rounder against Adrian Yanez, who obviously is not just in the UFC right now, but is kind of taking it by storm. You know, he's one of the brightest faces in the bantamweight division right now. So I was really high on him coming in, and you know, the Batista loss was, it was a little concerning, but I thought he looked great against Kevin Natividad. Now he was set up to look great against Natividad because he's just a slightly better version of all the things that Natividad does well. He's just a better wrestle boxer, a better athlete probably, and a stronger guy. But I'm with you. I don't see where Dos Santos offers much here other than, catching a guillotine on the way in, which will certainly be much easier if Johns is shooting because he's hurt. Or you mentioned, if Dos Santos can sweep him and Johns, turns his back to escape. Dos Santos has good back control, good rear naked chokes, but those certainly aren't the most likely way this fight's going to go. This one is built for Johns to win if he'll just, fight smart and fight to his potential. Give me Miles Johns by decision. Should be a fun fight, not an absolute barn burner, but if Johns is smart, it won't be as exciting as it could be. He shouldn't make this any more exciting than it has to be.
That's a really good point. And in fairness, I was probably picking on Miles Johns more than I should have. He only lost one fight in his career, but a lot of people thought he should have lost to Cole Smith in his UFC debut. And to fairness, I know he did suffer an injury against Richie Santiago. I think it was I want to say a knee injury. So, I should be giving more of a pass than I am, but.
Yeah, there was a pretty good gap there between his Contender Series appearance and his actual UFC debut, when normally the UFC is like, 3 months from now you're in the cage. So
no, there was hold on, maybe it was the Adrian Yanez fight. No, his UFC debut was only 3 months after his Contender Series. Maybe it was the Yanez fight that he got injured. Maybe that's
okay.
Maybe I don't know. I swear he got injured. I might be mixing him up, but I feel like he had something wrong with maybe a meniscus tear, maybe something small like a meniscus tear, which is not that long of a recovery or something. I don't think it was an ACL, because if not, it was an ACL, he'd been not long. I think it was like a meniscus or something. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe he broke his hand. Maybe that's what was. He broke his hand. I don't know. Something happened to him. I remember that.
I'll check.
Or
I'll put it on the screen.
I might be full of shit. I don't know. I apologize.
I'll check and I'll put it over the screen when we're talking about this. Next up, it is the bantamweights once again as Khalid Taha takes on Sergey Morozov. Taha, the 29-year-old German, is 13-3 with 1 no contest overall. He's 1-2 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He fought most recently last November at UFC on ESPN Santos versus Teixeira, dropping a unanimous decision to Hani Barcelos. He takes on Morozov. The 32-year-old Kazakhstani is 16-5 overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He made his debut in January at UFC on ESPN, Chiesa versus Magny, against the super prospect Umar Nurmagomedov, and lost by submission in the second round, getting choked all the way out. Odds in this one do favor Taha slightly. He is minus 165. Morozov plus 145 as the slight underdog. Keith, is Morozov better than Nurmagomedov made him look? Is Taha better than Barcelos made them look? And who wins?
Yeah, to give you a simple answer, I think yes. I yes to both those answers. I think I actually like both of them. I'm glad you said that. I think it's gonna be a really fun fight. Both guys, I agree, got matched up some really tough competition. But yeah, let's get into it. So Taha, he's very aggressive. He uses lateral movement really well. He's a moving target, quick hands. He stays tight between a high guard defense, throws combos. I love that he carries his base with him. He really steps into his shots. He keeps his legs underneath them, which generates good power. We've seen that on the regional scene. We even saw it in UFC. But I expect him to see even more power because his technique is there. Like I expect to see more knockouts coming from this guy moving forward. And even what I also like is we talked about last week about Jennifer Maya not giving ground, even though she did in her fight, but about that's one thing she does well. Like even Taha, when he was absolutely outclassed against Barcelos, and Barcelos was teeing off on him, he still held his ground. He knew that was important. And then when he held his ground, he still fired back big shots. It was actually dangerous, but still dangerous when he was getting teed off on, which is very few people could say about. But because he has such a big base, he is open to leg kicks. That's actually what opened the holes for Barcelos. But Barcelos is the guy that can kind of find that hole where other guys wouldn't. One thing about Taha, he does wrestle. He will sneak in a takedown. He's pretty good in scrambles. We actually saw that in the Barcelos. At one point, he was winning some of the grappling exchanges. But he's also extremely hard to submit. When Barcelos had his back and was working for submission, Barcelos is a very good grappler, and he couldn't submit him. And the other thing, and I know he keep bringing up the Barcelos fight, and even though he's done an all fight, is one, his chin was really impressive that he didn't go down. He's never been knocked down in his career. But also his output. Like, this is a guy that was getting absolutely just demolished, but was still kind of throwing a lot of volume, being competitive. And even though it was a clear decision for Barcelos, I actually thought like Taha had some really good moments. Now we'll go to Morozov. Is another guy I like. He's well rounded. He's definitely a different style of striking. He bounces more. He's pretty light on his feet. Good speed. Decent pop. I'm going to say big power, but decent pop. Mixes punches and kicks in well together. Nice leg kicks. Mixes in takedowns behind his striking. Like he'll throw some strikes and set up his takedowns. I like his wrestling. Good entries. Good both in on the hips or if he gets in the body lock, like for some upper body takedowns. He does need to improve his top control though. He's not his opponent Nurmagomedov, who's going to hold you down and kind of suffocate you. But he has some hard ground and pound, and he has 3 submission wins. The one thing I don't like about his striking, one, I think he could have a little more power, but also he can tend to cruise. He gets a little Trevin Giles, Jorge Masvidal in him, where he's kind of cruise, or he just simply gets a little gun shy. So as a prediction, this is a really hard fight to pick. This is a really fun fight. I kind of like both guys. I'm going to go with Taha, though, as they both took a step up in competition. I still think Taha fought the better fighter. And I've seen him hold his own against Barcelos in moments, in pockets, in spurts. And I'm really high on Barcelos. I mean, I think we both are. I mean, we're legendary for how high we are. We're the only guy that was unranked, and we had Jay Petrie's own Ronnie Barcelos. But really fun fight. Give me Taha by decision, and I think it's going to be an absolute war on the feet. And you know what? I'm going to make this my fight of the night. Like I think this is going to be the fight that the guys get the 75K. Actually, I think it's only 50K for this one, right?
I think they're back down to 50K.
Back down to 50K, yeah. Get 50, yeah. Of course they went back down, but yeah, 50K bonuses.
I can see everything that you've laid down there. The thing that I've seen as kind of the common thread running through Taha's now 4 fights in the UFC is that his success seems to be more or less attached to the extent to which he can just physically bully and overwhelm his opponents. Like when he is the bigger, faster guy, he has pretty easy sledding. When he doesn't, it feels as though he kind of runs out of ideas. Like I agree with you that he put on a good show against Barcelos, even when he was getting it put on him, and and not in the Chris Moutinho sense, but actually was still trying to win the fight, and there was still, every chance that he could have landed something or done something. He was still there, but against Morozov, I have the feeling that Morozov's gonna get the better of it. I don't really have any more detailed way to put it than that. Like I agree with you that it's going to be a real exciting fight, but I see Morozov maybe winning the 2nd and 3rd round and just kind of pulling further ahead as as the rounds go on. Give me Morozov by decision.
Yeah, this is a tough one to pick. I think Morozov's probably the more technical striker,
but Taha's got so much more explosion and power
and more output.
Yeah,
that's gonna be a fun one though. This is one of the ones that I wasn't too excited about. and then I did film study, and I'm like, man, that's gonna be a banger.
Well, I like that you said that, because Morozov's fight with Nurmagomedov was better than I remember it being, and then Taha's performance against Barcelos is definitely better than I remember it being.
Yeah.
My mind just filed that away as like a complete whitewashing by
Yeah,
Barcelos,
me
but
too.
no. Yeah,
Me
so
too. It's funny. Taha was one of these guys. I actually just completely forgot about him. And I'm like, oh, Taha. Like, who's Taha? And then I'm like, oh, this guy fought 4 times in the UFC, and like got the knockout. And he's had like a decent showing against Barcelos. Yeah.
Yep. Next up, the strawweights take the cage as Amanda Lemos takes on Montserrat Ruiz. Lemos, the 34-year-old Brazilian, is 9-1-1 overall. She is 3-1 in the UFC. More specifically, she's 3-0 in the UFC since dropping to strawweight. She fought most recently back in March at UFC 259, knocking out Lavinia Souza in the first round. Before that, her previous appearance was at UFC on ESPN, Munoz versus Edgar, where she took a unanimous decision over Mizuki Inoue. She'll be taking on Ruiz. The 28-year-old Mexican is 10-1 overall. She's 1-0 in the UFC. She made her debut in March at UFC on ESPN, Brunson versus Holland, where she took a unanimous decision over Cheyenne Bays. Lemos is one of the biggest favorites on a card full of them. She is minus 520, minus 530. You can get Ruiz at plus 410, plus 415 as the substantial underdog. These are two women that I picked against wrongly in their last fights. When Amanda Lemos took on Lavinia Souza, I knew I was taking a flyer because she was a huge favorite over Souza as well. But I thought Souza might, be able to catch her as she came crashing in, hurt her on the feet. I felt pretty smart about it. Not that anything I predicted happened. Like, Lemos just did her Hulk smash routine on her, and it was over in 3 minutes. Amanda Lemos, she's very much that Jessica Andrade type, She dropped from 135 to 115 and just somehow stayed as strong as she was. And ever since then, she's had pretty easy sledding. Mizuki had her moments just because Mizuki is very much a neutralizer. She just takes any fight she's in and kind of like, it doesn't get out of second gear. But she dominated Miranda Granger and she dominated Lavinia Souza. And yeah, she's a problem for this division. It's nice to have Montserrat Ruiz around. I picked against her against Cheyenne Bays. I just saw Ruiz as someone who's coming from Invicta and as a one-weapon fighter. And I don't mind one-weapon fighters, but when that one weapon is the head and arm headlock throw, I'm never going to pick you in a fight. I didn't pick her against Bays. I was wrong that time because it just turns out that Bays was ill prepared enough that the head and arm throw actually worked it felt like 15 times. That is not going to work on Amanda Lemos. Montserrat Ruiz, she's super short and stocky, thickly built, powerful. It's not very often that Amanda Lemos has this big a height and reach advantage, whether it's strawweight or at bantamweight. But Ruiz's game is to, rush in behind punches so that she can get her hands on you and go for that hip throw. If she tries that on Lemos is going to take her back, German suplex her, and punch her lights out in about 30 seconds. If she doesn't try that head and arm throw, then it's the same outcome, only it takes maybe 3 minutes. Give me Amanda Lemos by first round knockout, probably on the ground.
Yeah, and if we get a suplex, it's kind of sad anytime there's a suplex in the UFC and we don't have Jeff Black calling it a suplex. The proper term.
The suplex.
The proper international term. Shout out to the great late Jeff Black. And right now, about 95% of our listeners have no idea who we're talking about, even though he had one of the biggest impacts in the UFC history, especially the rulemaking and all that. Anyways, back to the topic. Lemos looks incredible in her last fight. She, we know about her athleticism. Her athleticism is off the chart. Her hand speed was great. She tends to throw from her hips. She's very loose with it, though. She's much different than like Nascimento, who has she's very loose, and she almost uses it to an advantage. Like we talk about, Trevin Giles somehow made it on this show many times, but she works a similar up jab, uses a lot of feints to kind of set up her power shots. When she steps in the pocket, tight power shots. She's a back foot fighter where everything's coming off her back foot, where she springs off that back foot, which really generates really good power. She's got some just she knows how to use her athleticism with technique, and it's a beautiful thing when it happens. She can fight from both stances, so she'll hurt you, then switch stances on you, so now everything's coming from a different angle. Good power, hard kicks, particularly her calf kicks. I like that she'll like throw a combination high, then finish off low. She's just kind of batting you so much, and then she'll start kicking you low. You start dropping your hands, and she's going over the top. She was muscled against the fence, as you mentioned, against Inoue, but that was not the case against Souza. Now I know they're both completely different style fighters, but it's nice that she it didn't become a trend. It's like a certain fighter can do that, not all fighters. In fact, when Souza tried to get it to the clinch, she got battered in the clinch. I mean, she was landing nice elbows in there. I know Lemos, as you talk about German suplexes, she's got judo throws in there, and you talk about hard ground and pound. Now move over to Ruiz. Ruiz, in fairness, she only has one loss, and that's to Danielle Taylor. And she ran through Janessa Miranda. Now, I know Jason Miranda was a girl that a lot of people liked at one time, and she kind of underachieved, and it's kind of been a disappointment recently. But still a really good win to have on your resume. She's a southpaw on the feet. I think she's a better striker than most people give her credit. Like she has high output. She'll stay busy. She's kind of fast. She's a good athlete. She tends to she actually has a little Romero in her where she stays all the way out and then she bursts in with what most of the time she's a brute. But she lacks head movement. She's the bull. She almost ducks her head and comes at you. But she's a strong wrestler. She likes her upper body takedowns, particularly as you're talking about the head and arm throw, or most wrestlers would just call it the headlock.
Mm-hmm.
She did it to Cheyenne Baez like 150 times. It was one of those ones when we were talking about the recap. We were like, I think I remember got really mad again, like yelling about it. Like, but it's a really easy defense. Like even when you get taken down, all you do is cut your hips and come out the back door. It's I don't know. Anyways, but she also took her down, ground and pounded her. She does have 2 submission wins. She got a key lock off of a scarf hold, so that's kind of becomes it's like a whole series. That headlock series or the head and arm throw is a whole series for her. I like this fight better than it seems like you do. Like I think this fight is pretty fine. I like both girls. Lemos is going to want to keep it standing, obviously, unless she's hitting that German suplex. But I mean, like I shouldn't say she wants it standing, but she has such an advantage standing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, she does like to grapple, and she could it wouldn't surprise me at all if she wins a grappling matchup. But I mean, like she has such an advantage on the feet that she should want it to stay standing. Ruiz is going to want to close the distance, try to avoid Lemos' big below, especially if she gets in close. Watch out for the slicing elbows. I can't see Lemos getting thrown around like Cheyenne Baez does. I expect her to snipe her from the outside. I expect that she comes in as a bull, that she's getting blasted, eating jabs, maybe even stepping knees. When she starts slowing her down, a lot of kicks, hard body kicks, especially the calf kicks. And I even think Lemos is also going to get a stoppage. I think it's going to be a little later. I'm going to say, third round stoppage from just maybe even a standing TKO, just hurting her against the fence and just laying it out on her. Give me Lemos by third round TKO.
There you go. 2 strong calls for Amanda Lemos to keep the streak going in the strawweight division. The featured prelim at UFC on ESPN 26 is a welterweight showdown between Daniel Rodriguez and Preston Parsons. Rodriguez, the 34-year-old Californian, is 14-2 overall. He is 4-1 since joining the UFC as an alum of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought most recently in April at UFC on ABC2, Vettori versus Holland, taking a one-sided unanimous decision over Mike Perry. That allowed him to bounce back from his first UFC loss, a unanimous decision against Nicholas Dalby at UFC 255 last November. He is welcoming Parsons to the octagon. The 25-year-old Floridian is 9-2 overall. He's on a 4-fight win streak, all in the Florida promotion Combat Night, mostly around his hometown of Jacksonville. He fought most recently in June, submitting Jeff Peterson with an armbar in the second round. Odds in this one do favor Rodriguez. He is a minus 250 favorite. You can get the debuting Parsons at plus 215 on the comeback. Keith, who have you got in this one and how?
Yeah, this is another fight that I think the lines are way off. This is a good fight. Daniel Rodriguez is a guy that we've talked up. We both liked him on the recaps. I mean, he's southpaw. He's a pressure boxer, fast hands, works behind a long jab. He drops his hands, but similar to Lemos, where he uses like an up jab, he kind of throws from different angles. His left hook, we talked about in the past, absolutely killed Tim Means in their fight. He's got serious power. I mean, you look at him; he's got he's a bigger guy for the weight class. I mean, not many people who makes Mike Perry look small in the weight class, but he did. He's got serious power. Ask Tim Means, ask Dwight Grant. Even though he's very technically sound, he's got a lot of speed and a lot of things you like in his boxing. He can be dragged into a brawl, like he did a little bit with Mike Perry when he was way ahead, and he probably shouldn't. I mean, he was winning him and almost put Perry out several times, but it's something that he doesn't have to do. Which is go back to Dwight Grant caught him in a really good shot, but he's well rounded though. He can sneak in a takedown. I wouldn't call him a wrestler, but he does have that in the back pocket. Pretty solid takedown defense. The guys who try to take him down, he's not easy. He has 3 submissions on his record. I mean, he even got a submission in the UFC when he caught Tim Means in a submission. Not an easy guy to submit. So I like Danny Rodriguez. Now Preston Parsons, I like this kid a lot too. I think he's a great addition to the UFC. Plus, he's really young. He's only 25. Turned pro when he was 18.
Dude, he fought Mike Perry when he was 19.
19.
Like we were just, yeah.
And you know what? A lot of people are going to look at that and be like, so hold on. Let me back up. Getting knocked out by Mike Perry and looking at it from the lens of now, it looks terrible because Mike Perry looks like a really not even UFC level, really low. Yeah. But if you told someone that 2 years ago that he got knocked out, or 3 years ago that he got knocked out by Mike Perry, it doesn't look that bad. Then when you watch the fight when he was 19, he was doing extremely well. He was winning when he got knocked out, and he was only 19.
Perry's power was so nasty.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
early in his career. Yeah.
But this kid's 25, so he's at the age where you make big improvements from fight to fight, and they're not even just little steps; they're huge jumps. And I actually see that. You go through his last couple of fights, he looks better. I mean, his last fight, he looked incredible. Obviously, it's not UFC level. It's not Danny Rodriguez he's going against looking like this, but it's still really he had the performance before you get a UFC call that you want to see. Mm-hmm. He's what he showed is that he's just too good for the regional scene at this point. He's well run. He has a very Muay Thai style to his striking. High guard defense, great output. He's accurate, throws punches right down the pipe, everything's straight. I love that he'll throw like 2 punches high, get you lifting your hands up, and he's just setting up a digging left hook. So he throws 1-2 and then digs underneath with the left hook, which would do some serious damage, especially as he gets older and he's adding power. You know, as you get older, 27, 28, 30, you kind of have, a lot more power. I also love that he has lead elbows. He's a little John Jones in him where he'll kind of grab a little bit and then pull in an elbow. Nice snap on his shots, mixes in kicks well with his punches. Lots of kicks too. Kicks to the body. He throws a fast high kick. When I have seen him in trouble, it's mostly because he doesn't like being pressured. He likes to work from distance because he likes to step in elbows. He likes the kicks. He also doesn't check leg kicks, which obviously we've seen is a huge problem. But if you get in close, strong plum clinch, does really good at slicing elbows in close. Like I'm talking now, not the step in ones, but I mean in close battling, creating position in the clinch, slicing elbow. He likes to create space, really throw in some knees. But he'll mix in takedowns. he can be a little. He's a good wrestler. He'll drive through your hips. He's a good wrestler. Can be a little sloppy in his scrambles because he looks for submission, but he's a serious threat. He's got 9. Is it all his wins? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All 9.
I thought he had. Yeah, he's all of his wins are by submission. I mean, this guy's a serious threat. Now, as far as prediction go, this fight is absolute fire. Like, I love this fight. I like both guys a lot. Rodriguez has much higher level competition. That's no doubt. He surely is the more polished fighter. Plus, he's the one with the full camp as he was training for another opponent. It's really, really tough ask for Parsons to come into the UFC. This is the guy I like, by the way, too. To come into the UFC, one, it's always hard to make your debut. 2, you're going against Danny Rodriguez, the guy that I like. And 3, let's make it on short notice. However, this kid is so young, and I love his potential. I won't be surprised if D-Rod puts him out early and this guy's not ready. However, I love this kid's output. I love his variety. I love his takedowns. I love his submission game. You're talking about the lines being, so big that it's hard to find an upset special. Might be hard for you, man. It ain't hard for me to find an upset special. I ain't saying I'm going to pick it right, but I'm going big with the upset tonight, man. I'm going with Parsons to win a split decision in absolute war. I think, what'd you say? He's plus 250, 260? What is he?
He's like plus 215. D-Rod is like minus 250. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is my upset special. Let's go. In his debut.
I could completely see that happening. This is a tough guy for Parsons to make a short notice debut against. He's a guy, and you said it right. Like, Parsons does a lot of things really well at this point. His takedown game looked really impressive against the kind of guys he was fighting on the regional level. The question will be whether that carries over to someone like Rodriguez, who, again, older, bigger, stronger, has been fighting better competition. Man, that win by Rodriguez over Tim Means has aged really well. Because at the time it happened, I was like, okay, that's it. This promising but kind of late bloomer debuting guy just wiped Tim Means. It's over. Yeah. Turns out Tim Means it isn't quite dead yet. And that, like, the more guys Tim Means just, keeps beating, the better that looks for Daniel Rodriguez. Because it's not just that he stunned him and then choked him out in the second round. He put it on him in the first too. That thing was almost over at the end of the first round. Rodriguez looked fantastic in that fight.
That's right.
I think Parsons belongs. I think he's gonna do well. I mean, hell, he might go on a winning streak, starting in his next fight. But this is a big ask. Yeah, I mean, give me Rodriguez by decision. I think he's just going to be too much physically, and at least thus far, Parsons' best route to victory has been to hold his own on the feet, maybe hurt people, but he gets his work done on the ground. I don't think that's going to work on Rodriguez. Like I say, just a big ask. So I'm going to be chicken, and I'm just going to go chalk here and say, yeah, give me Rodriguez by decision. The 5-fight main card of UFC Vegas 31 starts with a featherweight matchup between Gabriel Benitez and Billy Quarantillo. Benitez, the 33-year-old Mexican, is 22-8 overall. He's 6-4 in the UFC. He fought most recently in December, knocking out Justin James in the first round at UFC on ESPN, Hermansson versus Vettori. Hurt him with a knee to the body, finished the job with elbows. That snapped a 2-fight losing streak for him, in which he had lost to Sadiq Youssef and Omar Morales. He'll be taking on Quarantillo. The 32-year-old Floridian is 15-3 overall. He is 3-1 in the UFC. Took his first UFC loss in his most recent appearance, dropping a unanimous decision to Gavin Tucker at UFC 256. Previous to that, he had come in out of Dana White's Contender Series Season 3 and won 3 straight over Jacob Kilburn, Spike Carlisle, and Kyle Nelson. Benitez, the moderate favorite here, is minus 185. Quarantillo is out there at plus 160 as the underdog. Keith, who do you have in the battle of Benitez and Quarantillo?
Yeah, this is a fun fight. So Quarantillo is a guy that he's not a great athlete, He's not very technical either, but he just makes up for it usually by just having constant pressure. Just he's coming to get into fight. Like this is not going to be a slow out boring fight. He's a pressure counter striker. His best strike is his counter overhand right. He got some really good power with that. He constantly working, constantly forcing you on his back foot. But if you can force him, you can kind of flip the tables on him and force him on his back foot. That's where he struggles. And that's what we saw in his last fight against Gavin Tucker. Gavin Tucker really forced him back. He does have decent power, Quarantillo. I wouldn't say it's earth shattering or anything like that, but he mixes in takedowns well with his striking. He's a good wrestler, wrestles well, is relentless on his takedowns. Even when you're sprawled out on, he'll continue to work to get that takedown. He can be taken down though, because he has surprisingly weak top control because he's constantly chasing submission. I know when I looked at the Contender Series, he was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He may be a black belt by now, but when I checked in the Contender Series, he's brown belt, and he has a submission threat. He's a submission, but he has an issue because he plays jiu-jitsu sometimes when he's on his back, looking for submissions instead of scrambling to his feet. And he's taken a lot of damage off his back when he's put that way. And cardio, what used to be a strength, and I still think is a strength, and his last fight did not look that good. Like that was really surprising to see Quarantillo really slowing down. But like you said, he was put in a fight that he was not used to. He's not used to backing up. And if you really don't train where you're getting pressured and you're backing up, it's hard to have that cardio if you're not used to it. It's really different. Like people don't understand that part of the game. Like some people can be the bull and some people can be the matador. And when you switch it, both guys, it might not work out. Now, everyone, for example, everyone always thinks that cardio is, if I go really hot out the gate, then I'll gas out. And that's not necessarily. Like some people, it's the opposite. Like avoiding shots will make you tire out and trying to counter. And I think that's what happened with Quarantillo. Now move over to Benitez. Southpaw, I just said about Quarantillo that he's not a very technical striker. That's not Benitez. He's very technical. He's technically savvy, just veteran type striker. Not a lot of tells. Very crisp jab. Everything comes off of his jab. He really uses the jab. He uses the jab to hurt you, but also distract you to where he finally launches in with his left hand, which is very accurate, has some good power. I like that he works the body with punches and kicks. Hard body kicks, legendary leg kicks, and on the broadcast they're going to talk about Javier Mendez talking about he's the greatest kicks he's ever seen, and they're going to say it probably 5 times. He throws the leg kick so much. Remember when I don't remember which fight it was, but he cut his leg open and it was like blood was gushing down his busted open shin bone.
Yeah.
It was, besides being gross, it was also like insanely tough because not only was it bleeding, gushing, he kept throwing it anyways. I love that he's got really good defense where he attacks and then he uses movement so well that he usually is in pop low leg kick and then he's out of range before you can hit him. So he's got really in and out style, and he can wrestle. He can wrestle and he can grapple, though we don't really see it often. It's more of I have it and it's plan B if I need it, but because he's such a good striker, he really doesn't have to often go to plan B. So as a prediction, Quarantillo is so busy that he can make this a really fun fight, and his output will always kind of keep him in the fights. However, Benitez is so crisp. I expect him to just brutalize Billy coming in with his jab. And when Billy starts to slow down from trying to charge in and getting, eating punches, once he starts to slow down, that's when Benitez butchers him to the body, butchers him to his legs up, and then really puts him out. I expect seeing Quarantillo falling down from leg kicks. It's like one of those fights. Give me Benitez. He might get a late stoppage, maybe even from leg kicks. But I think Quarantillo is tougher that he makes his decision. So give me Benitez by decision. And this is one of the fights I'm very confident in my pick.
I'm leaning this way as well. This is one of the ones where I feel the line is at least justified. Quarantillo's a lot of fun. I'm glad that you spotted and mentioned the fact that his cardio did not look like what we came to accomplish or what we came to expect. Because when he beat Spike Carlisle, a little over a year ago, that was just a revelation. That was him using weaponized pace and cardio to just beat a frantic fighter. He doesn't seem to have that anymore. Like, unless just something was wrong in the Tucker fight. Yeah, Benitez, amazing leg kicks, and not just the the newfangled, or everything old is new again, like low calf kick, but like old school kicks to the thigh as well. Just and I think Quarantillo is going to have a tough time dealing with that. Like, I think he's going to be eating a lot of leg kicks early and often. I can see him, like, having to start switching stances pretty early as it starts to hurt. I think they'll definitely start to accumulate as the fight goes on. And I think you're right as well. Like, this is gonna be Quarantillo marching into kind of a wood chipper for 3 rounds. I'm gonna pick that, like, Benitez actually does get this finish. That just Quarantillo's legs are badly compromised by the 3rd round. Benitez hurts him on the feet. Either just gets a clean TKO, dropping him from the feet, or chases him down to the ground and finishes it there. But give me Benitez by 3rd round stoppage with strikes. Next up, it's the middleweights as Rodolfo Vieira takes on Dustin Stoltzfus. Vieira, the 31-year-old Brazilian, is 7-1 overall. He's 2-1 in the UFC. That one would be the loss he suffered in his most recent Octagon appearance back in February at UFC 258, where he submitted to a 2nd-round guillotine choke courtesy of Anthony Hernandez. That puts an end to the 2-fight win streak with which he had entered the UFC, those being arm triangle choke submissions of Oscar Piechota and Saparbek Safarov. He meets Stoltzfus, the 29-year-old American, training and fighting out of Germany, is 13-2 overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He debuted out of Dana White's Contender Series last November, dropping a unanimous decision to Kyle Daukaus at UFC 255. Vieira is the comfortable favorite here. He is minus 225. You can get Stoltzfus at plus 185 on the comeback. In a sport, or at least in a promotion where everything has to be world class, Rodolfo Vieira is world class. He is legitimately one of the greatest grapplers ever to cross over to MMA in any serious manner. Like, I'm not going to count him on my fingers, but I think he's a 7-time Mundial's gold medalist. He's an Abu Dhabi winner. And for a guy like that to cross over to MMA, like actually in his 20s, and take it seriously, not just, take a fight or two in Japan or something, it's a big deal. It's why he came to the UFC with a good amount of hype behind him. That hype only intensified as he just squeezed the life out of Piechota and Safarov. And then it all came crashing down in February in, frankly, what a humiliating loss to Anthony Hernandez. I mean, in Hernandez, he was facing a guy who, Hernandez's best skill set is his grappling, is his ground game. So you would think that is just the best possible stylistic matchup for Vieira, but instead Vieira just gassed himself out in 2 minutes, to the point that by the end of the 1st round, like, he was standing with his hands like on his knees, just like barely able to stand, completely gassed in the 2nd round. Hernandez hurt him, took him down, and again tapped out one of the best grapplers on the planet with a just good old, first week of jiu-jitsu class guillotine. This is Vieira's chance to come back and just get back that shine and show that, okay, that was a speed bump on my way to being, UFC champ 2 or 3 years from now. This is his 2nd chance, and they've got him against a guy in Dustin Stoltzfus who, stop me if you've heard this one before, but his best skills are probably his ground game, and so this should be a fantastically advantageous matchup for Vieira, because he has an enormous advantage there in terms of, physical strength and athleticism. You look at the guy and he's just bricks on bricks. And it's hard for me not to just call for this fight to look exactly like the other again. I need to see, I need to see Vieira and see that he's made any changes from the body that he took through Mundials in Abu Dhabi. because he won all those things at heavyweights and at open weight. He won some absolute medals at the Worlds as well, and that's just not a body that's going to serve him well as a UFC middleweight. I don't know how much weight he cuts, but if this fight gets out of the first round, hell, if this fight gets out of the first 3 minutes, I'm sticking all my money on Stoltzfus. Looking back, Saparbek Safarov and Oscar Piechota, those were pretty. I mean, what is Vieira's best win? I'm not legitimately asking you that. I'm just like, you know what?
Yeah.
He's a guy that's come across and just absolutely like squeezed 2 sub UFC level fighters until their heads popped off, and then a UFC level fighter survived that and tapped him out. Stoltzfus, I mean, he lost to Kyle Daukaus, but he wasn't completely out of his depth. And most importantly, he held his own on the ground, and he wasn't dead gassed in the third round.
No.
I had planned on picking this fight for Vieira, just saying, you know what, he's made the adjustments he needs to. He's going to be fine. He's not just training with a bunch of yes men. He actually trains with Jacare, I'm pretty sure, who should be your guide to, how to turn into an effective UFC middleweight, out of being a world-class grappler. But you know what? To quote Keith, you know what? To paraphrase Keith, I'm going to say, if you don't have more than 2 minutes of functional cardio, I'm going to pick against you every time until I see that you do. Give me Dustin Stoltzfus by decision. Maybe he loses the first round. He at least wins the other 2. And if Vieira gets truly embarrassed again and gets finished by just a much less skilled fighter, maybe we won't see him in the octagon anymore. But here it is. There's your upset special. I think Dustin Stoltzfus has got this.
There you go. That's my boy Ben going with the upset. Yeah, man. I mean, there's not much to add to what you say. I mean, you talk about Vieira and his wins. You said, probably Safarov might be his best win, or Piechota, whatever you want. Let's not forget that Safarov hurt him briefly on the feet. Piechota not so much, and then Hernandez also hurt him a little bit on the feet. Vieira's really raw. I mean, he is, new to the sport. We could see improvements, particularly on the feet. I'm not betting on it for this. On the ground, you talked everything is he's elite of the elite, but he's the elite of the elite, as you mentioned, for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever it is. No need to write. You read it all. 7-time world champion and all this, but he's as good as we've ever seen. But what I like about his game is he's not just a BJJ guy in the sense of they need to pull guard and this that. He's more of a, we said it last time, a Jacare. I said last time a Ricardo Arona, where they can wrestle. He shoots on your hips. He's explosive. I mean, you just look at his physique. The guy is as ripped as anybody in the UFC. He's like a middleweight Alistair Overeem. He's just, I mean,
except for Ariane Carnelossi. Everyone is second after Ariane Carnelossi.
Nobody has her arms and shoulders. Yeah, but I mean, he's also the beast champion too.
Yeah.
But he carries so much muscle, as you mentioned. He gassed himself. Some of it is him gassing himself out from carrying so much muscle, but also he's never really struck before. So that is the adrenaline dump of a fight. I mean, I'm sure he's much more nervous than he is when he walks in. Even the Abu Dhabi finals, he's probably not as nervous as he is for UFC prelim, because you know what, fill-in guy. I'm not a big jiu-jitsu guy, but Haja Gracie's not going to kick his teeth in, or whoever he faces is not going to kick his teeth in, and then you see in his last fight, you got one of the best BJJ guys in the world get submitted by a low-level Anthony Hernandez. Not just beat, but actually submitted.
Yep.
Now you move on to Stoltzfus. He's well-rounded. He switches stance a lot. He can be a little gun-shy, which worries me, especially in a fight like this. He needs to have good output against a guy like Vieira. The big part of your game is to survive, and then, kind of like turtle in the hair kind of game. Let him go off to a fast start and just survive, and then just slowly pick along like Anthony Hernandez did. He sits on his punches, really throws his punches hard. His right hand is go to. He almost like whips it instead of throwing it. Like kind of takes everything. He literally dips to one side when he throws it. He throws in the occasional spinning attack, which I would not suggest against Vieira to do. But a lot of kicks, good leg kicks. He's a good wrestler himself. He's hard to take down, which he's Vieira I think shouldn't have a problem taking him down, but at least he's not completely a can when on takedown defense. Like he might make him work a little bit. He's got 7 submissions himself. You talked about his grappling. He's creative with his grappling too. Like just throw this out there. Not that it's going to matter, at least not early against Vieira. But he's got knee bar submission. He's got a leg lock submission. He's got twister submission. So just to pull off those kind of submissions, he knows he's competent. But he's got no match for Vieira, especially early in the grappling. So it kind of comes down to 3 outcomes. One outcome is Stolfitz just cracks him on the feet and knocks him out. And that could be from timeout. The other one is he makes Vieira work, then slowly Vieira gasses out like we saw in the Hernandez phase, and Stolfitz either takes over, wins 2 rounds, goes decision, wins, gets a submission, whatever. But with Vieira extremely gassed. Oh, the third one is Vieira doesn't gas out, gets a takedown, and slowly works him over and gets submission. Now, 2 out of 3 outcomes is going in Stolfitz's favor. But I think we saw the very worst of Vieira. 2 things. Not only was he gassed, but he was like on like if there was like like video games where you have like the energy bar and then you get to 0, like he went in the negatives. Like he was beyond ran out of gas. Like he was like ran out of gas and then you have to push your car a mile to the gas station. Like that's how gassed he was. He ran out of gas and then the muffler fell off and pieces of the car started falling off too. Like it was as bad as he was. So could he learn from that? Well, he's an elite athlete. I mean, this is a world champion and as you said, 7-time world champion. You got me worried more than I should be. Like this is one of those ones I kind of like, he's gonna right this wrong. But you made
Don't
a lot.
Let me talk you into it. Remember the last time?
Yeah, I know. As I was gonna take top of my first round knockout, suddenly I'm not. But that's on me for giving it to peer pressure. I'm not gonna give it to peer pressure this time. I think we're going to see the best of Vieira. I think he's going to take him down. I think stylistically he's a good matchup. One thing that Stolfitz likes to do, a big part of his game is his kicks. I don't know if he'll be gun shy throwing those kicks, being that Vieira can catch him. I think you just throw him anyways because he's going to. If he wants to take you down, he's going to take you out, especially early. No, if you want to not throw kicks when he's gassed, sure, but early just throw the kicks. But I think Vieira takes him down. I think he just does a much different game. Holds him down, works position, slowly inches, holds position for a long time. Weigh yourself on him, make him work on bottom instead of you on top. If you have to take 3 minutes of just holding him down, little pitter-patter shots, slowly inching your way, move from full guard to half guard and slowly make your way. I think he does, and I think he gets a submission. I actually think it's going to happen late in the first round. So give me Vieira, but I am not nearly as confident I was like 10 minutes ago before you did your breakdown.
We will see how it plays out on Saturday. Third from the top of the UFC on ESPN 26 main card, it is a lightweight clash between Jeremy Stephens and Mateusz Gamrot. Stephens, the 35-year-old American, is 28-18 with 1 no contest overall. He's 15-17 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He is currently mired in a 5-fight winless streak with losses to Jose Aldo, Zabit Magomedsharipov, Yair Rodriguez, and most recently, just back in May of 2020, Calvin Kattar, who knocked him out in the second round at UFC 249. There's also a very quick no contest against Rodriguez sandwiched in there, in which there was an unintentional eye poke. He'll be taking on Gamrot. The former 2-division KSW champ is 30 years old, out of Poland. He is 18-1 with 1 no contest overall. He is 1-1 in the UFC. He dropped his debut to Guram Kutateladze at UFC Fight Night Ortega versus Korean Zombie last October, came back this April and knocked out Scott Holtzman in the second round at UFC on ABC Vettori versus Holland. Gamrot is a comfortable favorite here, minus 220. Stevens plus 180 as the underdog. You can make the argument that Jeremy Stevens should be suspended until Drakkar Klose can fight again. I would certainly make that case.
Yep.
You can make the case that, and we talked a little bit about this off air, that to a certain extent he's been coasting on reputation for a while. I mean, clearly, having lost 4 straight, competitively he's fallen off a cliff, but still seems to carry this aura of a fighter that, all of his fights are dog fights. And he has this power that he can just finish it, with one strike at any moment. And really that's off of like 1 or 2 like real one-shot knockouts quite a long time ago. Tell me what you think about that, and tell me what you think about this fight.
Ben, when Jeremy Stevens knocks someone out, they don't fucking move. Something like that. So I 100% agree with the Drakkar Klose thing. And I think it's ridiculous that not only was he not punished, that he's doing interviews and saying things like, I won because Drakkar Klose can't fight and because he was assaulted when he wasn't prepared at a weigh-in. I like Jeremy Stevens. I like him as a fighter. As I covered him when he was in Boston. He was very nice to me, so I'm not like, I'm just being fair. Like he was he comes off like a dick, but when I interviewed him, he was a very nice dude. Very intense guy, but like cool. But he's moving up to 155, back up to 155. I think that's a good point of this career. As you said, I think his power has been grossly overrated, as you mentioned. But I think it goes with him to 155. As it should. As he's a pressure counter striker. He does well to draw out feints to land his shots. He loves to brawl it out. But I as you mentioned, I think his power is overrated because he tends to telegraph his shots. He can still crack you. You go back to the Josh Emmett fight where he knocked Josh Emmett out, with a big, huge shot. But, I don't. He's not Francis Ngannou, though the broadcast will make it sound like that way. Like it was one of the hardest hitters in UFC history, and that's not true. The stats will say otherwise. But he's got a powerful overhand right. He loves uppercuts. I like his leg kicks. Like I think that's the best part of his game is crushing leg kicks. Though he can be a little bit flat-footed, he's fairly easy to hit. He tends to be a stationary target, and he stands directly in front of his opponent. A lot of things I'm saying is what I was saying about Drakkar Klose. Didn't know read to update my notes as he didn't fight. We already broke him down. But he keeps his head on the center line. He's so heavy on his lead leg that leaves him open to leg kicks, which is surprising for someone who's so good at leg kicks. And one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is that he's really susceptible to body shots now. Yair Rodriguez hurt him to the body in their fight. Jose Aldo put him out with a body shot. We think of Jeremy Stevens as this power banger, but he probably does his best work in the clinch. He's a strong clinch fighter. I think he's strong besides his physique, but also his personality. Like, get you inside, he's mean. Push his head on your chin, hit you with a shoulder. Like, he's a guy who loves violence. So, like, I agree with that. Like, Jeremy Stevens doesn't want to just beat you; he wants to hurt you. But he's not a great wrestler. I mean, you go back to was it Frankie Edgar fights? Doesn't really look for offensive wrestling himself, though he can get some takedowns. He got some takedowns like Yair Rodriguez. But if he's taken out, he really struggles to get back up. I'll give him credit. He does have great sub-defense. It's been like 12 years since he was last submitted. And if he's on top, great ground and pound. I mean, I think about Yair Rodriguez just beating him, and he still almost got a late stoppage. It's funny because even though he easily lost a fight to Yair Rodriguez, actually that was his best performance of recent date was a loss that he clearly lost. But to even be somewhat competitive with someone like Yair Rodriguez. And the one thing you can't ever question about Jeremy Stevens is his heart. His heart and his ability. Even though he's losing a fight, he'll still put himself in it the whole 15 minutes. He throws hard, and he's got legendary cardio for a guy who throws as hard as he does and throws, puts everything to it. he'll still be throwing the same heat in the 15th minutes that he did in the first minute. Now, moving on to Gamrot, much different fighter than Jeremy Stephens. Southpaw, very technically sound, long strikes down the pipe. One thing, so even though Gamrot lost his debut to Kutalaza, like that says nothing to me about Gamrot. It says to me everything about Kutalaza. Like I'm just like, yeah, Kutalaza is really good. Like we knew he was good, and I was like, no, he's really good. Because I still feel the same way about Gamrot as I felt before. Like actually, I feel maybe even better. Like he's very accurate, good hand speed. He changes stances. He changes his foot position when he's blitzing in, which obviously if I'm coming in from a southpaw stance and I switch, it gives you a different angle, gives you a different look, and the opponent doesn't realize you switched. And the very, very best strikers do this. Anytime I see a striker do this, I'm so impressed. Max Holloway does it a lot. Israel Adesanya is the absolute master at it, and Gamrot does it, which I like. Also, he showed off his power. Like in his last fight, he cracked Scott Holtzman, who's not an easy opponent for anybody. Put out Scott Holtzman with a big shot. I don't like that he was hurt to the body. Not that hurt to the body, that Kutalaza had success. Kutalaza really landed kicks to the body. That's something that Jeremy Stephens, I think, will have his best avenue is to go after his legs and especially his body. He also was dropped several times by Kutalaza, which was surprising. But besides his technical striking, though, Gamrot's a great wrestler. Great entries. If you sprawl him, he's just going to drive right through. He's good at cutting angles, gets you down, heavy top pressure. He's got 4 submission wins. He actually will drop down, like in scrambles. He looks for leg locks. He's opportunistic. And he also has great cardio because you go back to the Kutalaza fight. That was a fight that I thought he lost 2 rounds to 1. But even though he was losing, he had a late surge and made it competitive, and he actually made it a split decision based on that late surge. So as far as prediction, Stephens has power. He has leg kicks that are always dangerous. He obviously has the kicks to the body, and he obviously has extremely high level experience. But he has not looked good in a really long time. I don't think the answer to Jeremy Stephens is just move it up to lightweight. I think Gamrot is more technically sound. I think he's faster. I think he's the better wrestler. And I think even at this point in his career, he might even have the more power. I don't know if he finishes Jeremy Stephens because that's a really tough task. But I expect him to dominate, and I wouldn't even be surprised if we get like a 10-8 round. So give me Gamrot and give me Gamrot by decision and an absolute blowout.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you here. And normally I'm a fan of fighters, like as they move through their mid into their late 30s, moving up rather than down in weight as a way to try to restart things. But it's problematic for Stephens because he trades on power and physical strength, and he's just not a big lightweight by modern standards. And I mean, the guy's been around so long. Well, you talked about, how long it's been since he's been submitted. This is how long it's been since he's submitted. The last guy to submit him was Joe Lauzon. The last guy before that was Dean Thomas. That's how long it's been. Yes, kids, that gray-haired guy that you see like talking in the UFC booth and like coaching Tyron Woodley, that guy tapped out Jeremy Stephens. That's how long it's been. It was like 2006 or something.
Yeah. Wow. So when was that Joe Lauzon one?
Joe Lauzon one, it was 2009. They were the headliner of UFC Fight Night, Lauzon versus Stephens. He got armbarred. But yeah, that's how long this Jeremy Stephens cat has been around. I'm glad that you pointed out the defensive wrestling thing for Stephens as well, because Gamrot is a good wrestler, and while he is not exactly a Titanic lightweight either, he's going to be bigger than Stephens. He's younger, less tread off the tires, fresher. I think that by the second round, when you look at this fight and somebody tells you, hey, one of these guys is from Poland and one is from Iowa, it's not going to look like you expect, because the Polish guy is going to be running a top position clinic on the Iowan.
That's a good point.
And again, just agreeing with you down the line, Stephens, even at this point in his career, is a really tough guy to finish. I mean, Yair Rodriguez is one of the he's not a perfect fighter. He's got his flaws, but he's still one of the most breathtaking offensive machines in that division. He couldn't stop him. Calvin Kattar could, but Calvin Kattar hits like a truck. Gamrot is not any of those things, but I agree with you. He's gonna make this look easy. Give me Mateusz Gamrot by a one-sided decision. The co-main event of UFC on ESPN 26 is a bantamweight matchup between Marion Reneau and former divisional champ Miesha Tate. Reneau, Reneau turned 44 last month. Reneau, the 44-year-old Californian, is 9-7-1 overall. She's 5-6-1 in the UFC. She's currently on a 4-fight losing streak, though in fairness, probably all 4 women on that streak were top 10 fighters at the time she fought them. They would be Kat Zingano, Yana Kunitskaya, Raquel Pennington, and most recently in March, Macy Chiasson, to whom she dropped a unanimous decision at UFC on ESPN, Brunson versus Holland. She is welcoming back the former champ, Tate, from a 4-year absence from the sport. The 34-year-old is 18-7 overall. She's 5-4 in the UFC. We've not seen her in the octagon since November of 2016, when she lost a unanimous decision to Raquel Pennington at UFC 205. Prior to that, she lost her belt in devastating fashion to Amanda Nunes by first-round rear naked choke in the main event of the blockbuster UFC 200. Despite Tate obviously being something of an unknown quantity at this point in her career, she is the slight favorite here. She's minus 140, Reneau plus 120 as the underdog. I wrote a little bit about Tate as one of the 3 fighters under additional pressure to perform at this weekend's card. And it's because this is either a cash grab and publicity ploy, or it's a real comeback. And pretty much everybody's going to decide that based on how she looks against Reneau. And it's more than just winning or losing. She could win this fight and still have everyone go, okay, I don't care what Miesha Tate does now. Or she could win this fight, or maybe even lose it, and have everyone go, okay, I'm glad to have Miesha Tate back in this division. That's what it really comes down to. Because, yeah, she's been gone for 4 years, but it's not as if the division moved on without her. The last 2 women she lost to are Raquel Pennington, who's still in the top 10, Amanda Nunes, who's still the champ. She won the belt from Holly Holm. Holly Holm is 39, and she's still so effective that she's basically put a bottleneck on 2 divisions. Like she's goalkeeping 2 divisions out of their title challengers. Like Miesha Tate, if she wants to do this, it's basically like coming back to your, vacation house, turning the lights on and just, saying, hey, all the furniture's still here. The questions are, how is she physically? I mean, again, she's only 34. She's fighting a 44-year-old. So if she wants to be, if she has put in the work to do so, there's no reason she couldn't be every bit as good physically as she was in 2016, if not marginally better. But that'll be a question to be answered in the cage. The other question will be, how well has she kept up with the sport? She's been involved with the sport. She's been a VP of talent relations for one championship for most of the last 4 years, which is another reason I never expected to see her back in the cage, let alone the UFC cage. She just seemed like a woman who had moved on. Just look no further than Conor McGregor to see what a couple years can do, even to an elite fighter, in terms of being able to deal with new trends and new tactical wrinkles in the sport. All kinds of question marks. Because of that, I think Reneau is actually a perfect fighter for her to come back against. This sounds like it's going to be Reneau's retirement fight, win or lose. So she's going to get the best version of Marion Reneau, and the best version of Marion Reneau is on a 4-fight losing streak, but has been competitive in all those fights, and they've all been decision losses. She's still a tough out. Reneau, obviously, the first thing everybody goes to is her age. I think she's actually a little tired of it, but it's the elephant in the room. It's just so rare to see a fighter, any weight class, either gender, this competitive at the highest levels this late, just at this age. She looks amazing. Not just like she's a physical specimen. It's unbelievable what good shape she's in. She's still, I mean, she is not a plus athlete by the current standards of the bantamweight division. I mean, she has slowed down. Her hand and foot speed have slowed a bit. Her gas tank is not endless. I mean, she looks like she could run a marathon, do a triathlon, do 100 pull-ups, but she does get tired late in fights, and she only does that well by fighting at a pretty deliberate pace early in fights. Like she's made certain concessions to age. Skill-wise, she's good everywhere, but not great anywhere. If anything, I'd say what she's probably best at is being an opportunistic grappler. Just getting advantageous positions, sweeping, forcing scrambles. She's an opportunistic submission artist if the threat is presented to her. If Miesha Tate is still good at the things she was good at 4 years ago, this should be Tate's fight to lose. Tate was never a great striker, but very good wrestler, and a good ground and pounder, good submission artist. It's just a shame that Ronda Rousey was such a dreadful style matchup for her in both their relative primes, just because Rousey was better on the ground, stronger, quicker, and she was a much worse striker, but it didn't matter because they ended up on the ground. This is the hardest fight on the card to call, just because we literally don't know what we're getting with Tate. But I'm gonna go the route of she's taking this seriously. She wants to make a run. She at least wants to get into contention again. I mean, obviously it's Nunes who completely slaughtered her, still atop the division. That's still a terrible matchup. But if she gets through Renault and she looks like the old Tate, there are plenty of women in the top 10 she can beat. I mean, I'll probably be beating the drum for her to be in like the kind of 11 through 15 bubble list of the women's bantamweight rankings if she does to Renault what I think she will. And what I think she's going to do to Renault is probably win all 3 rounds, get takedowns when she wants them, navigate danger, test the waters in the stand-up against someone in Renault who can defend herself but doesn't have like shocking knockout power, so Tate's not running into too much danger. Just Miesha Tate fights a smart fight. Again, wins all 3 rounds. It'll be a sad farewell for Marion Renault, a happy welcome back for Miesha Tate, who, I mean, she's a star, or she was a star. I'm kind of surprised how quietly this is going, but expect the UFC hype engine to rev up behind her if she looks good.
Yeah, I'm really surprised by it too. Like I understand that they didn't want to make it a 5-round fight to make it the main event. Like I get that, but if you're not going to make it the main event, like you better off putting it on last week's card. Like you better put it on Connor's card, get some more eyeballs. Because you're right, Miesha Tate is like one of the most popular female. I mean, besides Ronda Rousey, who's been more popular than Miesha Tate?
There's those two, Carano and Cyborg.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I guess Amanda Nunes maybe at this point, but probably not. Probably not. But I mean, she's up there for popularity, and I mean, she's a good-looking girl, so that
and
draws
Nunes has beat them all.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, while you were talking, I was looking at the bantamweight rankings, and you're like our number 15 right now is Tracy Cortez. Like if she beats Mara Renault, like I'm not saying she'd beat Tracy Cortez or whatever, but like there is an argument for one win and she's back in that top 15 rankings. So which is crazy when you think, and that shows you how shallow the division is. But it's crazy to think we're like one win in 4.5 years. So I'll say this about Miesha Tate. I recently interviewed Miesha Tate, and she was one of the just one of these people like instantly I just hit it off with, like just one of the nicest, just a great person. Which is gonna pain me to say some negative things about her right now. I always thought that she was more tough than good. Like I never saw like skills that really jump off the page. Like she's kind of flat-footed on the feet, kind of slow. I was watching her fight against Raquel Pennington. She was just really telegraphing her shots. Only throw one strike at a time. I like that she went to the target. I mean, she targeted the body, but there was no threat there when she went down. Defensively, she was very stationary target. Didn't really move her head. She had no answer for Raquel Pennington's jab. She was competitive when she grinded against the fence. She's always had good clinch striking, and she, as you mentioned, she's a very good grappler. She's a good wrestler. She's relentless with her takedowns. Good at cutting the corner. She good entries. She can shoot. Even the times when she was in bad position against Pennington, she drove through and kind of got herself in okay. She never like won positions, but she got herself in like a better position than she was. She gets taken down. You saw her against like Holly Holm. She has good top control, good back takes. She has 7 submission wins in her career, including when she won the title by submission. Defensively, she's insane. I don't know, insanely tough. When you go back to like her first Ronda Rousey fight, where she was willing to break her arm, then tap, and that's when the fight wasn't even that big. That's when it was in Strikeforce. Like it wasn't, headlining UFC pay-per-views. Didn't have a reality show behind it.
Didn't hate each other yet.
They didn't hate each other. That's another point. She was probably at that point. That actually was what really made Ronda's name at that point. Like they were probably equal name value at that time. But I don't know if that's the same person we saw 4.5 years ago. She looked really tired against Raquel Pennington. She looked mentally broke. It was a close fight heading into third round. You could argue it was 1-1. Might have been 2-0 depending, but it could have been 1-1. And she really needed the third round, and she jumps guard to start the round. Just seemed really weird to me. Now you move over to Renault. On the feet, she's mostly a boxer. She's got some pretty good snap on her shots. She really steps into her shots to draw power. I think she's got good movement. She's more of a slip and rip counter striker. Her dipping, she likes to dip to the left and counter left hook is her best punch. But she struggled in the clinch against Yana Kunitskaya and Raquel Pennington. That's a position that Miesha Tate can have success against her. She can sneak in a takedown herself, but I wouldn't say she's a very technical wrestler. But you mentioned she is a submission threat. She has 3 submissions on her record, and she can find some submissions off her back. And she also has never been submitted in her career, which is really nice going against a grappler as Miesha Tate. Now, it's been so long. Something caught my eye when I was watching the Raquel Pennington fight. Miesha Tate's 2 cornermen for that fight was Brian Caraway and Rob Fowlis. Brian Caraway was her boyfriend at the time, who she's now broken up, and she now has a baby with somebody else. Right. And obviously, Rob Fowlis has tragically passed away. Yeah, I don't know why I'm mentioning this. I'm just saying, that's how much times have passed since she last fought. She looked so bad when she left. I don't just simply expect her to be somehow better 4.5 years later. Now, when we talked, when I interviewed her, and that was right before she announced that she was coming back. I made a joke about her coming back, like that son of a bitch. She should have gave me the news then. But I understand that personal life can have a major impact on your fighting, and she's clearly seems like she's in a much better place now than she was then. She obviously be more well rested. Hopefully, any lingering injuries will be gone. However, I don't think the prime Miesha Tate was that good, and I kind of feel like she was right place, right time kind of girl. And I think Renault wins. It would shock me if Miesha Tate takes her down and grounds out victory. No, but guys, I've only made one upset pick, and you guys know me. I ain't scared to make another one, so I'll give you another upset pick. Give me a Mario Renault. Not only do I think Mario Renault is going to ruin Miesha Tate's comeback, I think she's going to do it badly. I think it's going to be one of those sad comebacks. I think she's going to beat her up, maybe put her at one point. Miesha Tate's going to be on her back, and Mario Renault is going to be teeing off her. And I think actually the Mario Renault might get a TKO. Give me Mario Renault by second round TKO.
Woo! All right, so. Keith is calling for the Matt Wyman type of comeback from a long layoff.
Yeah, that's a good example. I don't know if it'd be as bad as Matt Wyman, but that's a pretty good example.
All right, we definitely have some dissension on the co-main event, so make sure to check out the recap immediately after this card on Saturday so we can see who is laughing.
Yeah, who would have guessed that Miesha Tate, though, is 10 years younger than Mario Renault? You leave the sport for 4.5 years and you're still only 34. That gave me some pause. Wow, she's only 34. I expected to be so much. I thought it would be 38.
Yeah, I mean, Renault's almost her entire UFC career has taken place while Tate was gone.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
True.
That brings us to the main event, a lightweight matchup between Islam Makhachev and Thiago Moises. Makhachev, the 29-year-old Dagestani by way of American Kickboxing Academy, is 19-1 overall. He is 8-1 in the UFC. He is currently on a 7-fight winning streak over Chris Wade, Nick Lentz, Gleison Tebow, Cajun Johnson, Arman Sarukian, Davi Hamosh, and most recently, back in March at UFC 259, Drew Dober, whom he routed on the ground and finally finished with an arm triangle choke in the third. He'll be taking on Moises, the 26-year-old Brazilian product of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil, is 15-4 overall. He's 4-2 in the UFC. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. Most recently, he took a unanimous decision over Alexander Hernandez at UFC Fight Night Rosenstrike versus Gane in February. He won 2 fights last year, defeating Michael Johnson by a second-round Achilles lock after having a pretty rough first round, and taking a unanimous decision over Bobby Green on the Halloween Fight Night card. Makhachev, as we spoke about off the top, one of the bigger betting favorites you will ever see on in a UFC main event, not named Shevchenko or Nunes. He is minus 600 right now. You can get Moises plus 450 as the substantial underdog. I will toss this one to you first, I think, but just a lot of fighters like to claim nobody wants to fight me. Everyone's ducking me. It's a cliche. I look no further than last week where, Sean O'Malley pieced up Chris Moutinho while just literally half the UFC bantamweight division was jumping up and down in their seats like contestants on The Price is Right, hoping to get called down. I believe it when they say it about Makhachev. He's got that Dagestani, there is no upside to fighting me vibe about him, because ironically, given the fact that his one loss is just, getting caught with a single huge punch and finished, he's not a guy that's going to lose in a stupid way. Like that guy that happened to almost 6 years ago now, that guy doesn't exist anymore. They're these Dagestanis, especially the ones that come through AKA, they're just airtight guys. You're going to lose. It's going to be miserable. Five rounds is going to feel like 5 weeks with this dude on top of you. If you give him your neck, he's going to take it and choke you out. If you don't give him your neck, you get the moral victory of just losing 5 rounds. I can believe that nobody wants to fight this guy. So credit to Moises for stepping up. And as much as I'll snipe at the UFC's matchmaking, I think this is just him. This is just them doing what they can to get this guy active when he's available, because the other thing he unfortunately has in common with Khabib Nurmagomedov is he disappears for quite a while and never fights more than about twice a year. How do you see this one going? What are the avenues to victory for Moises? Who do you think wins, and what do you think is next for Makhachev?
So you made a really great point about, nobody wanted to fight this guy. This guy's been in the UFC since 2015. He's been in the UFC for 6 years. How many guys have called him out? Can you remember? Kevin Lee.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I don't remember anybody else. Credit to every single guy who stepped up and has fought him. I think maybe Drew Dober might have actually asked for it, maybe in his last fight, or just,
At the very least, Dober accepted without even a second thought as soon as they offered it.
Yeah. But there's not many guys, when guys are like, oh, he would call out, and they're calling out guys in the top 10. And think about how long he's been ranked in the top 10. When you're calling out guys in the top 10, I want to fight everybody above me except for number 4, whatever ranking he is, it's not, that's not the guy you want. I'll take this guy and this guy, just name everybody except for him. I get it. We think about, we've talked about before, I said, one of the worst feelings in the world must be being chest to chest with Kamaru Usman when he's got, you both got an underhook and he's just pushing you against the cage and ripping punch after punch in your ribs. What would the feeling be against Khabib or Islam when they got you on their back and you're pressed against the cage and kind of sitting on your butt, and they have your legs wrapped up in that little, where both your legs are in between their legs in that triangle, and you
Yep.
can't move. Like, imagine that feeling. Imagine that feeling. It's only the first round. You already can't move, and you know you got 5 more rounds of this. Like that.
Dude.
The mental fortitude to even get through that must be insane. So let's talk about Makhachev. So southpaw, really well rounded. Like we're talking about his wrestling, but his striking has come a long way. He's really elusive. He's been using feints really well. He's a counter striker, and his counter left, his power left is really a good strike. He does it. He likes to counter, not so much where he like even though he feints, not so much to draw the attack. He tries to beat you to the punch. Like you go to step in, and he throws the left, trying to beat you. And most time he does beat you.
Better boxer than Khabib at this point, isn't he?
Oh, way
Quite
better.
a bit. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I would. Well, yes, he's a better. But I always thought Habib didn't get enough credit for his striking. I always thought he was a much better striker than people gave him credit for. But we'll go on another rant for that. It's just sometimes when you're just such a good grappler, everyone forgets that like, hey, Habib outstruck Iaquinta. Pretty much didn't use his wrestling. But even though he's a great striker, he did get rocked briefly by Davi Ramos, but in 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, that's like the only negative you can say about it. That he briefly was rocked by Davi Ramos. He also can have low output. He tends to cruise a little bit on his feet, but a lot of kicks. Those good kicks, good dirty boxing. But when you talk about his wrestling is elite. Incredible entries. Incredible takedown defense if you try to take him down. If he's in the clinch, foot sweeps. He has he's got a very judo game to his. Like he gets underhooks, and all of a sudden, next minute, you know, nice, beautiful foot sweep. But his elite entries, chain wrestles together, great in scrambles. You want to see a really fun scramble game? Watch him win scrambles against Arman Sarukian in their fight. That was just an absolute thing of beauty. Smothering top control. Like I don't think he gets. I wouldn't say it's Habib's. It's not Habib's ground and pound, but it is Habib's control. Like he really controls you. Let's take one. Let's give Habib the top level, and then like one step below when it comes to top control, like Islam's right there. Really good ground and pound again, like 1 or 2 levels behind Habib, but he's like on his way. He's really getting there. You know, you move over to Thiago Moises. We talked about how much Islam Makhachev's striking has improved. So has Thiago Moises recently. He's just basic boxing, 1-2 combinations, left hook off of it, but he's really improved his hand speed. He's got some solid power, good kicks. He attacks both high and low. But I think the biggest improvement that I've seen in just his last couple fights is he's starting to build confidence in the striking. He's starting to feel comfortable in the striking, and that's why he's doing well in the striking. And confidence comes such a long way. But as far as grappling goes, he's decent entries, not elite. He kind of just shoots and he stops. He gets stuck under. But sometimes he just wants to create a scramble, even if he's on bottom, because he's got slick submissions. He's got 6 submission wins. He loves to drop down on ankles. We saw him catch Michael Johnson with an ankle lock. Almost caught Bobby Green in their fight. So as far as prediction goes, this is actually one of like my smaller breakdowns, because I feel like it's a really easy fight to pick. I mean, you talk about the odds. We opened the show -650, FanDuel -850. I mean, you got to favor Makhachev in this fight. I think it can be competitive on the feet. I still favor Makhachev, but when they grapple, I favor Makhachev's elite wrestling over Moises' submission game. Moises is a very good grappler, but Makhachev, he's got to smother him. He's going to wear him out. He's going to dominate the positions. He's going to land ground and pound. He's going to put him in bad positions before he lands the ground and pound, where where Moises can't really move his hips, kind of trap him against the cage, so he can't swing his hips around, look for arm bars, look for triangles, look for sweeps. He's going to put him in those positions where he can't. And I think does this for a while, wears him out. I think the rounds get, the gap between the two of them gets bigger and bigger. And I actually think Makhachev might even get on his finish. Give me a 4th round TKO, ground and pound.
Yeah. Agreed on all counts. I mean, the line looks ridiculous, but it's not just, their relative standing in the division, but it is that Moises' best routes to victory are just not things that happen to Makhachev. Grabbing an Achilles lock, that's not going to happen to him. And yeah, I mean, he's been an improving striker, but a year ago, Michael Johnson pieced him up in the first round. Like, outstruck him badly, hurt him a couple times. I mean, it wasn't a 10-8 round, but it was about as good a first round as Michael Johnson has had in a while. Like, he just looked really sharp, and then of course the wheels fell off the wagon 20 seconds into the second round because Michael Johnson. But
that should become a verb. Michael Johnson should become a verb.
Yeah, and and then he Michael Johnson. Makhachev does not Michael Johnson. That's that's as simply as I can put it. Moises hasn't yet been finished, even though he's been in trouble in his career. He is a tough guy. Hard to believe he's only 26. Like, he may continue improving for several years to come, but this will always be a terrible matchup for him, and it's an absolutely dreadful one this weekend. Give me Makhachev by unanimous decision. I believe he wins all 5 rounds. I could see there being some 10-8s in there. Just one of the rounds where he takes him down within the first 30 seconds. So Moises goes a whole round without even landing a strike, and just Makhachev is mauling him the whole time, like that kind of 10-8. And then Makhachev survives and advances. And what I was kind of saying when we started talking about this fight, nobody wants to fight him, but he's getting to the point where people are going to have to fight him. From here, he almost has to fight a top 5 type fighter next.
Yeah. You know who might have to fight him? Might be the champion, soon. I'm not saying he gets it. Obviously, Dustin Poirier does, but number one contender matchup. His
absolutely.
Next fight.
I mean, because there's a big knot of people ahead of him, but that big knot of people, a lot of them have already fought each other.
That's right.
It's fortunate that Oliveira actually hasn't fought most of the other guys, because otherwise, right, it's a big twisty thing. But yeah, this is going to be
you're looking at his next fights being Gaethje, Chandler, one of these guys. I love how we're so confident we're already matchmaking his next fight. Wait till we start the recap show about Thiago Moises and a huge upset.
I'll put a clip of this. I'll slip a clip of this into it.
Yes, if it happens, we gotta eat some crow.
All right. So there you go. 11 fights up, 11 down at UFC on ESPN 26. This has been the Sherdog Radio preview. I'm Ben Duffy. He's Keith Schillen. Please do enjoy your week, enjoy the fights, and check us out immediately after the main event, either through the Sherdog.com front page or simply go directly to the Sherdog YouTube page, where we will have a live recap, react to all of these fights, whether we were right, wrong, things we learned. We take your questions, your comments. Certainly come and let us have it. If we counted chickens before they hatched, and Moises is your new number 6 lightweight in the world come Sunday morning. But thank you very much for listening.